welcome to another edition of Metis Warrior here with Timothy and Alexandria.
Hello, everybody.
And so today we got a good show for you. Hopefully it'll make you wake up. Hopefully it'll make people actually think and ask questions of their organizations. We're going to look at some of the major Metis organizations out there and some of the issues that we've been receiving. Now let's start it off with the Manitoba Metis Federation, the MMF. The number one complaint that we get there is people disagree with the homeland map. People disagree with who they say is Metis and who they say is not Metis, right? Well, either you're Metis or you're not Metis. And that's pretty much, we're going to deal with that here in a minute. But we have no complaints, not one damn complaint about the MMF financials. They're very transparent on that. You know, we're not going to hold them to the past and stuff like that. Whatever happened in the past, happened in the past. We're talking about right now, today, in 2022, September, as we record this show. So we got to look at some of the other organizations. Let's look at the Metis Nation of Saskatchewan. Are they being transparent with financials? We get a lot of complaints that they're not. And we can only say, this is what we're saying, that the complaints that we receive. The Metis Nation of British Columbia, we're getting a lot of complaints that they're not being transparent. The Metis Nation of Ontario, we're getting a lot of complaints that they're not being transparent. The Metis Nation of Alberta, we're getting a lot of complaints that they're not being transparent. Now, let me ask people a question. We know the MNC has not released the financials that we've been asking for since Cassidy's been president. Everybody's been asking for these financials that's been contacting us, and then we send out requests asking for the financials. They refuse to release the financials. Has anybody heard Glenn McCullum come forth publicly and state that the MNC needs to release the financials? I haven't seen it. Have you seen it?
No, I haven't. Across the board, I haven't seen anything like that.
And so let's look at Lisa Smith. Has anybody seen Lisa Smith, the president of the Metis Nation of British Columbia, publicly come out and say that Cassidy, the president of the MNC, needs to release the financials? I haven't seen that. Have you seen that?
I haven't seen that at all.
Yeah, I haven't seen that at all either. Now let's look at the Metis Nation president of Alberta, Audrey. Has anybody seen her publicly ask Cassidy to come out and release the financials? Have you seen that? I haven't seen it.
I haven't at all, and nobody's told me differently.
And let's look at the Metis Nation of Ontario. Has anybody seen Margaret Froh step forward and tell Cassidy that she needs to release the financials? Has anybody seen that publicly?
Not at all.
So this is a huge problem with transparency. Don't let these organizations bullshit you into thinking that they're being transparent when clearly they have no desire. It seems to us, the way that we are looking at this, because we have seen no public requests come from the Metis Nation of Alberta, the Metis Nation of British Columbia, the Metis Nation of Ontario, the Metis Nation of Saskatchewan, requiring or asking that the Metis National Council actually release the financials. So all of these people don't give a shit, it seems, about transparency when it comes to financials. That tells us that every president that we just mentioned needs to be voted out of office. Now, we said it time and time again, that what you're going to do is you're going to get all your stuff ready, and when the elections come, we're going to make these changes, right? If you got to vote these people out of office if you want change. Nobody's publicly stepped forward and asked the MNC to release the financials that we've seen. We haven't seen it. If you've seen it, please send it to us. But we haven't seen that, okay? So that means that they're supporting Cassidy in her behavior to basically ignore many, many requests asking for the release of the financials. This should be very concerning to the average Canadian taxpayer, because this is funding going for the Métis people And yet, what the hell is being done with this money, man? Where's it going? We know where the hell the money's going in the Manitoba Métis Federation. We do not know where the hell the money's going for the Métis National Council. A lot of members of other organizations are saying that they don't feel like they know where 100% of their money is being spent either, and we're going to deal with that and explain that a little bit more in this show.
Well, you know what? I'm glad that Timothy used the word Métis organizations, because that's the proper fitting term. I'm not going to use government because they are organizations. And more to the Manitoba Métis Federation, we've had, they're not perfect. We've had our disagreements, or we don't agree with some of the things that they're doing. But one thing for me personally that I agree with is that they're having these engagement sessions where they're going to various provinces, they're meeting the people, talking to the people. That's what you need, is a face to face. And we know for a fact that Cassidy, the president of the Métis National Council, we've had so many people tell us she's not approachable, she will not answer questions. So it's kind of refreshing when you have the MMF going to right across Canada and into the United States, having these engagement sessions where they're meeting with people, answering questions. They're able
Hey, that's
to.
a key word, right? They letting people ask questions, which we're hearing in the Métis Nation of British Columbia. They were not letting people ask questions. What in the hell's up with that? So that tells me you got to replace the entire damn board in British Columbia. If you have a meeting and people can't ask questions, what in the hell's really going on? I mean, it sucks, but at some point, if you can't vote the right people in and they can't make the right decisions, then you got to say, to hell with that organization, and you got to make sure the government does not give these people funding anymore, and you got to take it to a different organization. We're not saying what organization to take it to, but before you do that, try to make change with your vote, because people should be allowed to ask questions. And again, we've had our past problems with the MMF before, but now today, I mean, they've done a complete turnaround, man. They actually letting people engage in conversation with them on a bigger level than ever before.
And engagement, again, that goes back to the indigenous philosophy of everyone sitting in a circle and everybody being allowed to have their say, their opinions matter, their questions matter. And we have not seen this with the MNC Custody Karen. And there's a lot of people that are upset. And we
Well,
have.
hold on. But you said we hadn't seen it with Cassidy Karen, but obviously people's opinions don't matter with the MNS, the MNO, the MNA, and the MNBC, because people have been asking and demanding MNC release financials, and these organizations that are part of the MNC, guess what? They're not publicly telling the MNC they need to do this. So those people have to be voted out of office, because in other words, if you won't change, you got to make your votes count.
That's right, because all Métis should matter. There should be a table, a forum for respectful debate, respectful conversation, not shutting people down. There's a lot of organizations that block citizens when they start to ask legitimate questions. There's been a lot of cease and desist letters with various organizations, lateral damage, lateral violence. That's not the way of our people. That is not true democracy when it comes to a Métis organization. That's being a tyrant, dictator. So how can we ever unite as a people when people ask questions and they get shut down? And some of the questions that people have been fielding to us in regards to MNC is who is Cassidy's board of directors? Nowhere on the MNC website publicly is this made known to anyone that wants to visit the MNC website. Where is that listed? And publicly is very important for transparency and accountability. Putting this stuff out so the public can look at it, digest it. There's nobody seeing that where it's publicly listed on the MNC website. I know they've revamped the website a bit. Okay, that's good and all well and good and fine. You've got the money to do that. But where is the transparency? I get so sick of asking the same questions. And another thing is,
Well, I mean, to say that too, to go more on to who is it's important that you know who is on the board of the MNC, who all is involved in that process, because people, they are playing with your money. This is your money. They get the millions of dollars because you sign up for these organizations. Out of all the organizations, and I never thought, when we first started Métis Warrior 5 years ago, I never thought the day would come where I would actually say, we know where the money's going with the Manitoba Métis Federation. We know that. But where in the hell is the money going with the MNC? We don't know that. We have no clue. And the fact that all these other organizations, I know I keep saying it, are supporting this non-transparency for the MNC, this is a huge problem. And you should be concerned when it's your money that they're playing with and they're doing God knows what with, because you can take this money from them easily by simply withdrawing your membership from every organization that does not want to be transparent to you, every organization that wants to ignore your questions, every organization that wants to block you on their Facebook pages, their official organization Facebook pages, unless somebody's being like using curse words on there or something like that, they should not be blocked. Citizens can ask questions. And if you withdraw your membership, contact the government and say, these people no longer represent us because they're not transparent. There's huge issues here. They don't support transparency. Then they will lose the funding. And wherever you go, wherever you choose to go, that is the places that it's going to have the people. That is the places that's going to have the money. Now, we said it in the last show that these organizations have a chance to turn it around, and they have not chosen to do that at all. As a matter of fact, they doubling down on the non-transparency, and they supporting Cassidy's behavior.
and myself and a lot of people have had this same question, and it's a very good question. Was the trip to Rome, and we know that Cassidy went to Rome March 2022, and the recent trip to England for Queen Elizabeth funeral, September 19th, 2022, was this travel approved by a board? Did they have to go to a voting process for her to spend the money? Who paid for it? Was it the Canadian taxpayers? Was it the MNC? Who paid for these trips to Rome and England, to photo ops and all this? And did the MNC consult with any affiliated organizations that the MNC represents? These are hardcore questions that people deserve answers to. And a lot of people, another
I don't think any MNC president that's not representing the Métis people in transparency should fly their ass to go see anybody's funeral overseas when there's not transparency there. You first got to do the right thing by your people before you start taking all these damn trips. And like you said, since she's been president, she's been a trip. You go trip here, trip there, trip there. And it's all about snap the photo, take a trip, snap the photo, take a trip.
that's not representing the Métis people, and a lot of people, myself included, were the minutes or meeting minutes and any kind of discussions or deliberations about these two trips, were they posted anywhere? Again, here's that word: publicly online, where the Métis people can see these discussions, deliberations, and we know that. Uh, Cassidy accompanied the Governor General and the Prime Minister to the Queen's funeral. Again, who paid for that? I mean, don't you think the Métis people deserve to know who paid for the trip? Was it Trudeau? Was it the Governor General? I mean, there's a lot of unknowns when it comes to money being spent by the MNC. And here is a big one from day one: revamp the website, but there is still no 2021 MNC financials anywhere posted on the website. So the Métis people publicly can look at these financials. We know that a statement of claim was done, but a statement of claim was done. Do we know that if any subpoenas were served, do the Métis people publicly know at what stage is this statement of claim at? Don't you think? I mean, don't.
I think it was a bunch of bullshit to basically try to avoid putting out financials. And again, we said there's no reason that they cannot release their financials because a lot of the financials that we've asked them to release has nothing to do with that stuff in the statement of claim. So why can't you release the other financials if that's going to be your excuse? But we haven't seen it posted publicly anywhere.
It's not on their website, so
Yeah.
it's not publicly, and people check the website for me on a regular basis, send me screenshots. There is no 2021 MNC financials anywhere to be seen. Tell me where that's transparency or accountability, because it certainly isn't. And another thing I have a problem with, and I've had a problem since day one, is their address. And here it's misleading because on their particular website, they've updated the MNC address to 301 340 McLaren Street, Ottawa. And if you go to their Facebook page under address, it says non applicable. So who's running the social media? Your website is saying you're at 301 340 McLaren, but you go to Facebook and it says under the address line, not applicable. So what are you applicable to the Métis people? You can't even get your shit together and get. It's just beyond me. Beyond me.
But let's go back to the one complaint that people have with the MMF, and that is who is Métis and who is not Métis, right? A lot of people disagree with that. Whatever, you can debate it, disagree with it. That's one of the major complaints that people have. But going into that, I kind of want to go back into the MNO because either you're Métis or you're not Métis. How in the hell can you cast a vote to determine if somebody's Métis? I don't understand that. I'm trying to get clarification on that. This is kind of just hit me as like something new that they're doing. But it's either you're Métis or you're not Métis. Now we don't share the same beliefs that the MMF does on where some of the communities are or whatever. We disagree with them on that. However, there is a lot of fake there's a lot of fake claims of Métis that we know. We've actually seen the genealogy. And so I will tell you that people sent us genealogy, and we've had conversations with many people about their genealogy, and they kind of woke up and said, yeah, okay, yeah, I'm this, and blah, 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 because people didn't understand what it was. People didn't understand what Métis was. But there is Métis in communities where the MMF is saying that there's not. So we will share that disagreement with them. However, what in the hell is going on at the MNO? Can we dive into that a little bit?
Well, recently I've read something online, and this is alleged, and I'm going to read part of this statement. And it says, and I quote, the MNO has done the hard work of conducting a full independent review of our registry. That registry has been under debate for years and years. To date, this is their statement, allegedly. To date, we are the only Métis government. I don't like the word government. I'd rather use Métis organization, but it's not my words. To have publicly released the results of a registry review. So, has Alberta released a registry review?
And
BC?
what we're going to do is we actually going to do another show covering their registry review. It will not be in this show. And we're going to look deeper into that because we definitely are a little concerned about some of the things that's going on at the MNO, and we want to dedicate a separate show to that. One of the things that I want to say going into this is that with NBC, one of the questions that we had sent Lisa Smith was about her non-Métis employees. Now, we're not saying an organization can't have employees that are not Métis. We were just asking specific questions. Had Métis people applied? This is questions that we asked over the course of the last, 6 months to different people, different places. But specifically in British Columbia, we were trying to find out, had Métis people actually applied for positions and non-Métis were hired for these positions, because that would be wrong. If you're a Métis organization, you should absolutely employ Métis workers. And now we're not saying you can't employ non-Métis, but let me give you a theory real quick before we go back to that. The theory that I believe on why these organizations want to hire non-Métis is, guess what? If you have a non-Métis employee, they may be less concerned on what in the hell is going on with the money versus if you have a Métis employee who knows that funding is for the Métis people. They're going to have more of an interest on how you may be mismanaging Métis dollars versus having non-Métis employees. That is my belief on why a lot of these organizations are choosing to hire all these non-Métis employees. So when we started asking these questions to the Métis Nation of British Columbia, we didn't do a show on it right away because this has been a 6-month process on this whole employment situation of non-Métis versus Métis as far as our research on what's been going on. 6 months we've been looking at this. What did the Métis Nation of British Columbia decide to do? What they decided to do was release a video and meet our employees. And then on that video they released, they put in their non-Métis employees. From what I can remember of the video, it's been a while back. It's been a few months back. And so I thought, oh, okay, they're trying to get ahead of any show that we may potentially do on this. But if you're hiring, and I'm not saying that this is the reason, this is just my opinion. If you're hiring non-Métis to be employees because they'll have less of an interest on paying attention to any mismanagement of funds, that's a huge issue. And people that, if you're living in the Métis Nation of British Columbia, and if you applied for a job at the MNBC and you were not hired, but a non-Métis is in that position, trust me, we probably already talked to you because we've been contacted by a lot of people, and a lot of people were probably wondering when we were going to come out with that show. But it's not just been about the MNBC, it's been about a lot of organizations, and we've been contacted by a lot of people. And so it's been a 6 month process right now that we've been actually researching and doing interviews on this. Now going back to
Well,
what you're saying.
before I go back to the MNO registry, what Timothy is saying is very true. There is a lot of Métis organizations that have non-Métis, and I think it's under my firm belief a lot of Métis organizations do not know their Métis history. And maybe that's because the people that are in charge of their communication or what have you are not Métis. So a Métis person is passionate about their history, legends, and heroes. An example is the Battle of Seven Oaks, Victory of Frog Plain again, very significant in Métis nationhood. And did you know that the MNC Cassidy Karen did not post one single thing about Cuthbert Grant and the Victory of Frog Plain? Disgusting.
Wouldn't she have to give a shit about the Métis people and Métis history in order to do that? And yeah, she didn't do it, huh?
Well,
Not that we see.
very few Métis organizations posted about the Victory of Frog Plain, and that is disgusting that these leaders or organizations do not know their Métis history. It is shameful and it is disgusting, and that could lead into what Timothy was saying is they don't have a vested interest in what being Métis is all about because there's so many heroes and legends that were the foundations of Métis and the struggles with colonialism and the Canadian government that trickle down to today as well.
Well, I mean, and I don't know. I haven't. What she's saying is we have not seen them post that at all, and we were very discouraged about, and frustrated with the fact that this organization is called the Metis National Council would not post that. Now, have they posted it since? I don't know. People can go back just on that if you want to or whatever, but you can go back and look and see if they have. We hadn't seen it. Maybe they posted it somewhere in some obscure place. I don't know, but it should be easy readable for everybody to see.
And further to the MNO registry, this alleged statement, and it goes on to say, I quote, "We believe that transparency is a critical part of good governance. And as shown in a recent update that was released July 2022, the review found that 81.8% of citizenship files in the registry are complete or would be completed by providing final documentation or the swearing the oath of allegiance. And despite this, some 5,000 files remain incomplete, and addressing what this means for the registry and self-government is a critical next step for our government. And it says that now, allegedly, according to this, they want you to vote. Vote?
Now, going back to before you get into the voting situation there, the 5,000 files that are incomplete, are those people actually card holders of the MNO? Do they have voting rights? Are they receiving money? So if you have 5,000 files that are incomplete, is money going to these incomplete people who have incomplete files that's supposed to be going to verified Métis? But is it going to non-verified Métis? I mean, what's going on? And that's what we need to know. And does these people have any kind of voting rights? It seems very shady. I would think that people with incomplete files should not have a right to vote in any election at all at the MNO, and they should not be receiving any funding until they can be verified as Métis. Again, we're going to dedicate a whole nother show to this, but go ahead and to the
Well, to me, if your file is incomplete, you should not have a citizenship card. You should not be able to receive benefits until your file is complete. And again, the MNO is, they said in the statement, at this year AGM, the MNO citizens debated and passed a resolution which directed the PCMNO to initiate a province-wide plebiscite in fall winter of 2022 to allow all MNO citizens, including those within okay, this is what it gets me with MNO. They want to include all MNO citizens, including those with incomplete files to vote. In my mind, if your file is incomplete,
now
you should.
that is bullshit. And is the federal government giving the MNO money funding for people that has not been proven? Like, so if the MNO receives a set amount of dollars based on the amount of members they have, and this just seems like a huge act of fraud to me. And this is the way I see it, it seems like it's fraudulent if they turn in numbers of 5,000, and with those numbers, they turn in numbers of the 5,000 that's incomplete to the government, saying this is how many members we have, and so that they can get this additional funding. There seems to be a huge red flag there. And bro, how in the hell can you allow somebody who's not a verified Métis vote for anything? That makes no sense to me. And this may explain how she plans on winning any kind of future elections or any kind of votes, because you got 5,000. That's a lot of damn people that is not verified by their own write up here, right? Where'd you
That
pull
is
this?
the only write up, and this is the thing that really bothers me. And I quote: "The following plebiscite question was agreed to." So this was agreed to at MNO, and I quote: "Should all existing members, citizens of the Métis Nation of Ontario and the MNO Secretariat, whose files do not meet the current requirements for citizenship as set out in the MNO bylaws and registry policy, be removed as members, citizens?" And you pick yes or no. So if your file
And they
is,
get to vote. The own people get to vote
yeah,
on
but
this.
they're saying right here, if your file doesn't meet the current requirements for citizenship, should you be removed as a member? You shouldn't have been a member in the first place.
Hell no. And are
It's
they
just
doing this to defraud the federal government? Are they doing this to defraud the government out of funding? Is that why they boosted their numbers by having non-verified Métis up in there? I mean, this is red flag, red flag. This is some huge red flags here.
Well, MNO, I shake my head here. Why would you give somebody a citizenship card if their file is incomplete? And how should they be able to vote if their file is incomplete? You know what? There's so much to unpack with this MNO bullshit with incomplete files. Number one, logic, common sense. If your file is incomplete, you should not get a citizenship card until you provide the documents that allows you to be a citizen. End of story. It's quite easy. I mean, birth certificates and stuff like that, Most people have that shit together before they apply for the card, or they're waiting a matter of weeks or whatever. But you are not a citizen if your file is incomplete.
This would be one of the mass level of frauds that I've ever seen. If they are intentionally allowing people to actually, by these numbers, 5,000, according to that write up, 5,000 people with incomplete files to come in order to obtain funding to tell the Canadian government, hey, we got this many members. I agree with Alexandria. Nobody should have a Métis card if they are not been verified as Métis. Now, some organizations do. They're not the only organization that do this as far as giving people cards. We know that other organizations have given cards to people pending the rest of the verifications. That is shady too. We don't think that should be done. And some organizations has told us that they actually will give them a year to get it. Now, my question will be, how long has these people at the MNO had these cards, and not proven themselves to be Métis yet? I don't understand it. If somebody would like to explain this further, is these numbers being used to get Canadian tax dollars for funding for the MNO to get a larger number of money there? Is that one of the ways that they're obtaining this money? I don't get it. Like Alexandria said, there is birth certificates. If you're Métis, you have a birth certificate. You should be able to prove that you're Métis or not Métis and your genealogy.
Well, I mean, I know a lot of people there with 60 scoop and all that adoption. It does take a longer process, but you can't accept. You can't expect to be a citizen until all these things are in order. And let's put this into a very simplified rationale for people to understand. If you are not a Canadian citizen, can you vote? Can you? You
No,
can't. So why would you be able to vote if you're on this agenda if your file is incomplete? And
because that's the way that to me it seems that's a way that they would actually sabotage elections. One, because let me tell you something. If all right, so let's say hypothetically here. No, you have well, not even hypothetically. You do have a president of an organization who is allowing 5,000 people with incomplete files to be in the MNO, according to that write up that we found here. So by their own write up there. So here's the thing: you cannot allow people to vote because this will be fraudulent elections, and this will be a way to keep things going in Fro's favor. It seems people at MNO, if you want your organization to be a legitimate organization, you cannot allow this type of behavior. There are some huge red flags here. I know that there's a lot of supporters of Fro, and I don't know if a lot of those supporters are the ones that's unverified or not. I have no idea. But we've been contacted by people who support Fro, and that's fine. But if you're only supporting Fro because she's gifting you cards and funding or whatever other benefits that you may be getting, I'm not saying that's for sure. I don't know. But whatever, just for having the card. But if she's gifting you these things, then yeah, you're going to support her and you're going to keep voting her in, right?
that's right. Well, another example too is on the MMF card. It says right on the back of your card, or voting. So you got to have a complete file to get your citizenship card to be able to vote. I mean, it's just kind of simple to me, but like I said, I'm just getting upset with this whole MNO write up. I'm going to just uh, move that to the side, put that in a container
There's a
for right now.
lot of questions there. And if people want to contact us and shine some more light on this, and maybe if you disagree with what we're saying, contact us and with disagreements, and we'll hear you out.
And to kind of wrap up the MNC, and it's not really a wrap up because there's still ongoing controversy, lack of transparency, lack of accountability. Up and coming, the MNC General Assembly will be in Vancouver, BC, October 26th, 27th, 2022. And they're also indicated that travel and logistics will be followed by email. So I don't know if that means they're paying for travel or just travel information in regards to the logistics in regards to that. And we've had a lot of people contact us about the recent Métis Nation of BC AGM that was held September 23rd to the 25th, 2022. A lot of people were upset on how the AGM was handled, and several people contacted us and said that during the meeting there was no hand up signal, or really no, and this is their opinion, this is alleged, that there was no hand up signal, or alleged there was no ability to ask questions in the chat or question option.
No, either it was or it wasn't. It wouldn't be alleged. Either they had that or they didn't have it. People are saying they didn't have it, so that would be a fact. If they didn't have it, they didn't have it. And so if people are not, if the MNBC has now taken, and this tells me that there's a problem with the entire damn board there, which is unfortunate, because somebody should have stood up. If this is true, yeah, either you had it or you didn't have it. And unfortunately, we should have been more on top of that AGM, I guess. But either you had it or you didn't have it. And if you didn't have it, that's a huge issue. That shows me that the board is taking huge leaps backwards. It's more of the same. It was very disheartening to see Louis DeJagger step down as vice president and go about and do other things, because he was very transparent, whether you liked him or you didn't like him. And I know there's people that liked him and there's people that didn't like him. That man was transparent. Unfortunately, now with him off the board, that I would say now the whole board has taken steps backwards under the leadership of Lisa Smith, which would tell the people in the Métis Nation of British Columbia, if you're not allowed to ask questions, then maybe you should replace everybody on the board.
Yeah, there seems to be a growing theme with Métis citizens, Métis people getting shut down for asking questions. And here's a statement too, and if you don't believe me, you can go to the MNBC right on Facebook, and a lot of people have a problem digesting this statement. And it says MNBC is the governing Métis nation in BC, and a lot of people had the problem with the term nation, and I'll leave it that, in BC. And here's the stickler for me, and kind of really think about this: representing nearly 90,000 self-identified Métis people in BC, and yet here's the stickler: with
Self-identified.
with over, they're saying that MNBC
90,000?
has only 21,000 registered citizens to date. So they're saying they govern nearly 90,000, but yet they only have 21 registered citizens. Can you see a problem with those figures?
Yeah, let's do a news flash. You're not governing shit, man. You're not governing 90,000 people if you only have 21,000 members. This is what I'm talking about with these organizations that decide that they want to sit there and basically fluff numbers to get funding. This is what it seems to me, another attempt to fluff a number to get funding. That's a huge issue. Lisa Smith, that is a huge issue there. I don't understand. How the hell can you say that you govern 90,000 people, 90,000 Métis, 90,000? If you're telling me there's 90,000 Métis, but you only have 21,000, that tells me that there's 71,000 that don't like your damn leadership, that don't like the way that you're doing shit, and there's other Métis deciding to go other places because they're getting tired of smoke being blown up their ass.
Well, you know what? I'm not a genius at math, but it doesn't take a rocket science to. A lot of people have a problem, and this is alleged, where MNBC again is asserting that they represent and allegedly seek funding for nearly 90,000 self-identified Métis in BC, yet they admit that they have less than 21,000 members. So,
and we do know from past conversations, folks, that some of those members that are in that 21,000, they may be unverified, because we have heard in other interviews that we've done and other communications that we had through the MNBC that they are one of the organizations that do say, okay, you got a year to prove that you're Métis.
A year is way too long.
So is that part of that 21,000? They may have way less, but people need to fluff the numbers in order to get more funding, right? But people, again, a way to stop this level of bullshit is to cast your votes for people to get different people on the board. So make sure you got everything together that you need. And I'm speaking across the board, not just in British Columbia, across the board to vote. If after you vote, things keep going more of the same and you can't get people in there that's doing the right things, even though they're talking about transparency, but they're not really giving you transparency, then you go to a different organization. And we're not saying what organization to go to, but there is other ones out there. You go to a different organization, but when you do that, you make sure you contact the Canadian government and you tell them we have left this organization. These are the reasons we left this organization. So whatever your reasons is that you left, and this is the organization that you went to. So that way, the funding that these organizations get for your rights can go to the other organizations where you might be able to better benefit versus where you at right now, where only a few gets the real deal. This is not a secret society. This is something that should be full on transparency. And it's been so long since our last show. In our last show, we said they can turn it around, and they've chosen to get worse. I don't get it, man. And so, yeah,
Well, we've been trying to give time to see if true change would come, and many people in BC also contacted this on this, and they said allegedly, this is alleged, that MNBC has 180 employees, and they were asking out of those 180 employees, how many are truly Métis out of those? So that's another question that
that's
was
a
brought forward.
question we had asked. And you know what?
We're still waiting.
Here's the response that was sent out. The response that was sent out was, "This is not a." Oh, I don't know the exact wording. I wish I had it in front of me. But basically, this is saying this was not a good question that Métis Warrior was asking. This because, hey, I'll put this. I'll put up the response in the next show. I could probably do that, or maybe I won't. I don't know.
A
But
reasonable response.
yeah. But the thing is, they said that this was not how do they say it? This was not a question that they can answer because it could lead to severe uh,
Repercussions.
repercussions and penalties, which told us instantly when we seen this response. And by the way, this response went out to several people, basically encouraging them not to talk to us about this employment issue because they were worried about repercussion liabilities, I guess. And so, yeah, folks, if you're Métis and you applied for a position at the Métis Nation of British Columbia and you did not get hired, instead a non-Métis got hired, then yeah, that is wrong. Now, we're not saying that, there's some great non-Métis that do work for Métis organizations. We're not against hiring non-Métis, but what we're saying is, when possible, you need to fill these positions with Métis people. And again, my opinion on why they want non-Métis employees at a lot of these organizations, and this is my opinion, is because a non-Métis employee will not be very observative of how you're mismanaging the Métis funding, versus a Métis employee will look at that and call you bullshit and say, hey, why are you mismanaging this funding? So that seems to be the trend now, or has been the trend, it seems, for quite some time, to hire a non-Métis employee. And we're not saying any specific organization is doing this for that purpose, but we're saying that that's the way that we see it. If you see it a different way, let us know. Maybe there was no Métis applicants for the job, but there could be various reasons.
Well, I have a problem as a Métis if there's an organization, if they hire somebody, this is my opinion, I would have a problem with having somebody from INAC or the government of Canada having an upper executive position at any Métis organization. And I certainly would have a problem with a non-Métis, non-Indigenous doing reviews on citizenship and saying who's Métis, who's not Métis. I don't think you have a right to do that. That's just my opinion, folks. That's where there's a lot of problems where people can be given
Yeah, how you live?
bonuses and stuff for doing reports, and I don't agree with
So,
anything like that.
so you're gonna let 5,000 unverified Métis vote to determine if they can stay Métis? Either you're Métis or you're not Métis.
Can we just get
You
off?
can't vote somebody as Métis. That's a bunch of bullshit. And that's the red flag that Chartrand, Chartier, and Goudon's been talking about for years. How the Métis Nation has been watered down and infiltrated by a bunch of white people or whatever you want to call them, non-Métis, that is infiltrating these organizations and is getting citizenship without verification, and that's wrong.
Well, it's very simple. If your citizenship file is incomplete, you don't get a card, you don't get voting rights. End of story. It's not rocket science. It's not about fluffing the numbers. And here's something that I read on Twitter about MNBC. I found it very interesting, and I quote, "Hey, Métis Nation of BC, are you going to invite a third-party audit into your membership? Very curious how you're claiming 90,000 Métis in BC from a self ID on a census with no critical look. This isn't protecting nationhood. Also, MNBC isn't a nation." End of quotation. So there's a lot of angry people in regards to the number of, over 90,000 and only 21 citizens with the Métis Nation of BC. A lot of people seen the red flags and certainly had a problem with that. And the numbers are just too far on one scope to another with a lot in between that is unknown.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of unknowns there. And again, if you disagree with what we're saying, just contact us and we'll hear you out. And if you have different ideas about why this organization doing this or whatever, contact us and we'll have no problem hearing you out, listening to you, or whatever. Uh, uh, or reading what your response is to the show. Again, where is the true leadership of these Métis organizations? If you have the Métis Nation of Saskatchewan not publicly calling the MNC out for not being transparent, if you have the Métis Nation of British Columbia, nobody from these boards, nobody that we've seen publicly call out uh, Cassidy for not releasing the financials, the MNC for not releasing the financials. If you have the Métis Nation of Alberta not publicly doing this, anybody on the board, if you have the Métis Nation of Ontario not doing this, anybody on the board, then that shows you that all these people support Cassidy, which is a huge problem. Now, there is one individual at MNBC that has been behind the scenes pushing to have this information released. They feel like their hands are tied in this situation because Lisa Smith has got the control, blah, blah, blah. And they don't want to publicly speak out. So they have acknowledged to us that they're fully supportive of, I don't want to mention his name, but I will say that he's been very supportive of having the financials released. However, he's the only one at the MNBC that I've seen that out of all the organizations that have publicly nobody that is a member of the MNC has publicly asked for the MNC to be transparent to you to release those financials.
Well, you know what? Just doing a statement of claim is not good enough to hold off on transparency. I'm just so sick of the MNC. I'm just disgusted. It just gets my blood boiling. So let's get off the MNC because, like I said, I could talk all day on how disgusted I am as a Métis on who they are or what they are. I don't even know what they are anymore. And a lot of you are aware of the findings from the 2021 census population. The release date of this census was September 21, 2022. And they're saying, and I'll show you a few points of this census because I know a lot of people have seen it, that in 2021, 224,650 individuals reported being a registered member of a Métis organization or settlement. So that's a lot of numbers there. And registered members accounted for 1/3 or 33.3% of the 624,000 people who ID'd, self ID'd as Métis on the 2021 census. And almost half, or 46.7% of the over 43,000 people who reported being registered to the MMF, and this is important, lived in Winnipeg. So the MMF has a lot of people, like I said, that lived in Winnipeg, and it goes on to the breakdown and in regards to the census and all the information as well. And those reporting membership with the Métis Nation of Ontario, interesting, over 36,000 people were uh, relatively dispersed across the province, with members living in Toronto over 2,700, Ottawa over 2,000, Greater Sudbury over 1,900, Midland over 1,500, Windsor over 1,300, Thunder Bay over 1,200, and Sault Ste. Marie just over 1,100. And collectively, individuals in these 7 cities accounted for 1/3 or 33.4% of the Métis Nation of Ontario membership. And it goes on to Saskatchewan, just over 26,000 people, had the highest share, 13% of members living outside the province of Saskatchewan. So you can go look at the 2021 census population more in detail. Again, the release date was September 21st, 2022 for more graphics, etc. on the census.
Yeah. And so, well, what I'd like to say is that everybody, if you're a citizen of your organization, you have a right to ask questions of your organization. You have a right to demand transparency, because this is not their money. This is the Canadian money that's going towards that belongs to the Métis. That when they give it to these organizations, that's Métis funding. So only a small percentage of that would actually go to the organizations to do little things here and there. The rest of it actually belongs to the Métis people. And so you have a right to demand transparency and accountability. And there seems to be like a huge issue. I mean, even after it's been so long since our last show, we kept thinking, okay, somebody will do the right thing, because we said they can always turn it around. But they've chosen not to, and they've chosen not to call Cassidy out on not being transparent, which is this big secretive thing. And they're getting all this funding again for the Métis people from the Canadian government. So that makes me wonder if there is there any politicians that may be in the pockets of some of these organizations that are allowing this to happen. Because if these politicians or whatever, and the Canadian government is seeing, hey, there's 5,000 people that are members of the MNO that is unverified, that does not have a complete file. Well, that should be like a red flag when they. I don't know. All right, this is something we'll look deeper into in the next show.
And folks, again, it seems as of lately, Métis organizations, instead of answering questions, they like to press that block button, and it's much easier to block people than have to give it out an answer. And be prepared to, if everybody could have a moment of silence. Uh, Friday, September 30th, is the second annual National Day for Truth and Reconciliation in Canada. It's the day, of course, to bring awareness and reflection on the legacy of Canadian residential school system. We know that a lot of Métis people were the forgotten people in Canada's residential school, where the Canadian government and the various churches, their aim was to erase the language and cultures of the Indigenous people of Canada. And if you're going to get a orange shirt, make sure it's from a reputable organization. There's a lot of companies that are doing knockoff, ripping off Every Child Matters orange shirt. Make sure it's from a reputable Indigenous source. And we should remember this Friday, September 30th, for all of our family that were at residential schools in Canada.
That's it for me.
Take care.